Hello, friends, and welcome back. Today I'm joined with Spiro Koulouris, and we are talking about gout. It is a huge topic. For those who are affected, definitely know they're affected. A lot of people perhaps don't know they're affected and perhaps should know they're affected. So we're going to go into this today. Do you want to perhaps give us a little bit of an intro? What got you into this world and what is gout all about?
So gout affects, I would say, about 2 to 4% of the general population, and it usually affects folks over the age of 50, primarily men over women. I would say three-quarters men to women, because women have estrogen that protects them up until menopause, and after menopause, they're at a higher risk of developing gout on an even footing like men. And basically, it's an arthritic condition where the body produces too much uric acid. So when we eat foods have purines, and foods high in protein, like I would say meat, alcohol, processed foods have a lot of purines, and the kidneys break the proteins down, those purines down in the kidneys, and then releases uric acid. And usually, uric acid, when the kidneys function properly, they get flushed out by when you urinate. But if you have issues, then it crystallizes in the joints and you get a gout attack. So that's what basically gout is. And usually it's a condition with the kidneys where it doesn't filter uric acid properly enough to flush it out of the body. And I got it at the age of 26, unfortunately. I was overweight by 50 pounds, and I was out one night drinking with my friends. I was drinking lots of Jack Daniels and Cokes. And then I went home and I was in bed around 3 a.m. and I got stricken by a painful gout attack in the big toe. Usually that's where it strikes, the coldest extremity of the body. And I woke up in the morning, so I decided to go to the doctor's office, and he quickly diagnosed me with gout, which I didn't know what condition that was. He explained it to me. I was in shock, realizing that I got it at such a young age. So then I decided to do some research on gout over the coming months. I remember the initial attack was 3 weeks. I was in pain. I was using crutches. It affected the big knee, the knee as well as the big toe. So it was a very painful experience. And I start realizing and finding information on diet and what foods to eat, what foods to avoid. But there was no blog out there or community, I would say, where people could discuss gout. It was mostly medical studies and more hospital content, I would say. So I decided to start blogging about it over 10 years ago. And now I have the website goutonu.com, which is probably the largest gout community in the world, over 50,000 strong, and where I share information, treatments, diet, what foods to eat, what foods to avoid, and so on.
Yeah, well done. Well done for creating that community because I feel sometimes when people have questions, you can get from the doctor what to do, medicate this, do this and that. But when you suffer it and you don't perhaps just want to go on certain medications or follow, you kind of know that there might be another alternative, then it's good to have a community of what works and what doesn't work.
Yes.
So you said that it affects mainly men, mainly over 50, but obviously not exclusively. You getting it at such a young age. And a lot of the people who come and listen to Health After 30, they are women and they are, perhaps not there yet, perimenopause, they will go to, menopause. So this might actually become something that will be a pressing issue. It seems that a lot of it has to do with diet as well, which we know diet's important. But before we go into the diet, what are some perhaps signals and signs of gout that we would ignore? For example, when you had this experience of having your night out with Jack Daniels and Coke, waking up with a sore toe, what were perhaps some of the signs and symptoms that you had that you could have picked up on before the attack happened?
That's the thing about gout. It comes out of nowhere. There's no really any symptoms that you feel before. Some folks would say they feel a slight flare up in the joints, and then they know they're getting a gout attack. But that's after you had your first. You understand those signs better. But it really comes out of nowhere. It's just a surprise attack, and you deal with it. Yeah, unfortunately.
Would you say there's also a threshold perhaps, or would it be kidney function? Where is do you build up uric acid to a certain threshold and then it perhaps knacks, or is there a genetic predisposition that one has where the kidneys aren't functioning properly? Is there?
Yeah, there could be a genetic predisposition, I would say. But for the majority of people, it's diet. That's being obese and eating too much of the Western diet, which is very high in protein. So think of eating a lot of red meat, which we do in the Western diet. We eat
Mm.
hamburgers, steaks, right? So too much protein. The main culprits of gout are too much protein in meat. Uh, Too much alcohol. So alcohol is a big trigger for gout. If you're drinking a lot, you're at a higher risk. After that, seafood. So avoid the lobster, octopuses, and all those seafoods. Those raise uric acid in the body very quickly. Processed foods will raise uric acid, and desserts. Alcohol, meat. Oh yeah, and it's a high fructose corn syrup, and like
It's
Coca-Cola, Pepsi,
everywhere.
that will raise uric acid. So anything that takes the kidneys a long time to break down the foods, because usually when you eat vegetables, for example, it could break it down in 6 to 9 hours, whereas if you eat a steak, it could take up to 90 hours to break that down. So that really works the kidneys, that really strains it. So when you eat too many foods high in protein like that, and it strains the kidneys over time, then you're going to have issues with your kidneys, and then you're going to have higher uric acid in the body that the body can't release, and you're going to get gout.
And you kind of talk about specifically with animal products. You're talking about meat and stuff like this, as opposed to vegetable sources of protein.
Yes,
There's something
like beans.
like beans. There's something really
Yeah.
wonderful on your website. You say they may call gout a rich man's disease, but you'll teach people to eat like a peasant. So is that
Yes.
suggesting hop off the steak and start the beans?
Yes, yes, because that term comes from King Henry in England. He had gout, and back then the aristocrats used to get gout because they had access to all the rich foods and the alcohol, right?
Mm.
So they had access to all the meats, the red wines, and they would indulge and they would get gout attacks. And whereas the peasants lived in the farms, and they were poor, right? So they couldn't afford the meat. They would have meat maybe a few times a year, but they would mostly eat off the land. So they would eat the complex carbohydrates like beans, whole grains, fruits, vegetables, and so on. And that's what I advocate in my book, which is the ideal gout diet. Which should consist of 80% of your daily calories should be complex carbohydrates, as in fruits, vegetables, legumes, beans for protein, 100% whole grain pastas, 100% whole grain rices and breads. 10% should be limited for protein. And in protein, I would choose chicken breast, fish mainly.
Leaner
Uh,
meats.
yeah, lean meats, exactly. Some steak, some red meat, no organ meats, zero organ meats, zero seafood, and no pork, I would say. And the last 10%, I would say, for your daily calories could be fat. So yogurt, butter, eggs, milk, and dairy, and so on. So you see that 20% is animal based, and that's where you can get in trouble, and that's what you have to limit. You could go 100% vegetarian if you want. That's gonna be the ideal for your kidneys. But if I reserve a little percentage for meat and dairy in there, fat and protein for people that, like myself, I still do eat a good steak once in a while or have a burger, but I won't have it like on a weekly occasion, or every day.
Yeah, I like that flexibility actually, because if you just stick to a really strict diet, and even though it's for
Yeah,
health purposes, it can be really difficult.
for people,
And
yeah.
yeah, and you want to be able to enjoy life. And if you go traveling, you want to be able to still have that, flexibility in what you eat. But it's interesting that you talk about organ meats. So you say it's a more Western diet disease. I just know I have a Chinese background and the organ meats. Oh my gosh, they eat nose to
Yes,
tail. They're eating everything. Is
yes.
gout also prevalent in Eastern
It is.
countries?
Yeah, I see a lot of studies coming out of China, Taiwan, and you're right, it is growing there too. In the UK, I saw a recent article that the youth in their 20s are getting gout at an alarming rate because of rates of alcoholism. So they're drinking a
Mm,
lot at a young age. But it is a worldwide problem, yeah, definitely. But it's still more predominant, I would say, in the West
yes.
than the East, because
Mm.
in the East, I guess folks are starting to eat more and more meat, so it's growing there, but not at the rate that we have it here in the
And also the
West.
processed foods and the alcohol
Yeah,
and the whole
yes.
lifestyle that perhaps
The
comes with
lifestyle,
it.
exactly,
Mm,
exactly. You don't have the rates of obesity that we have in the East compared to the West.
yeah. How can we? I mean, there's an 80-20. And of course, nutrition has a large part to do with how gout will present in us, if it presents in us, right? What else can we do in regards to our lifestyle to also help support, prevent, reverse gout?
So I would say, like anything else, it's all lifestyle and diet. So remain your ideal weight. That's number one, because if you're overweight, you're at a higher risk of developing gout. So what does that mean? That means eating a proper diet. Majority of your daily calories should be complex carbohydrates, like I mentioned earlier. Exercise. I
Mm,
exercise now at least 3 times a week. And for gout sufferers, I would say it's important to exercise because if you have a history of gout attacks, those joints need to be re-strengthened. So I go to the gym and re-strengthen them with weights and so on. If you don't like to go to the gym, get a Fitbit and walk around at least 10,000 steps a day to maintain your ideal weight. If you like basketball, play basketball. If you like to play soccer, go play soccer. At least do a physical activity, and that helps control uric acid and so on long term. Obviously, no smoking. Limit your drinking because drinking will get you in trouble.
mhm.
Not only for gout, but for so many other ailments that are out there that alcohol causes. And diet, you should do you should do well and avoid
Mm.
gout. Yeah.
I feel like these guidelines are also what we genuinely need to also just stay healthy. And I think for gout sufferers, it's the reverse that they have to make once they've got gout.
Yeah.
Ideally, we want to
Yeah.
prevent it, but
Yeah.
prevention's not sexy. You know, like
No,
prevention isn't
exactly.
something that people are necessarily
And
trying to.
exactly. And people think, well, they'll never get it, and they
Mm.
feel healthy, and boom, it happens out of nowhere.
So yeah, that's what I actually love about what you do is it's like, okay, now you've got it. How do we fix this? And so with gout, and I want to just kind of dive into because joint pains are something that a lot of people also experience, whether it's arthritis or rheumatoid arthritis or something like gout. How does gout perhaps differ to other joint pains?
Well, gout usually specific hits the big toe, so the extremities, whereas arthritis can hit everywhere, back, shoulders. Although gout, the way gout works is you get stricken in the big toe, and if you don't take care of it, it starts rising in the body. So it starts rising to the knee. The next
Hmm.
gout, a few gout attacks will be in the knee, then it'll go up to the elbows, then to the hands, and then even to the back. Whereas arthritis, it could start from any
Any
part of the
joint.
body. But arthritis and gout are very similar. It's in the same
Mm.
family. So uric acid does play a role there as well. Yeah, I would say it's very similar.
Yeah, interesting. And I guess it's depending on how severe the attack is from gout.
Yeah.
If it's severe in the toe, enough for you to go to the doctor, or if it's not, then
Yes.
slowly it starts to creep through and
Yes.
up your body.
Yes. And it's very dangerous, I would say, if it starts creeping up to higher in the body. You could get tophi, which are calcium deposits in the skin, and they become lumpy, and that's you're gonna have to have that surgically removed. Although that's very rare, most people will treat their gout. The problem with gout is, I read a study that 50% of gout sufferers do not take their medication. So it's once you take your medication, you don't feel symptomatic for a while. You think you've cured it, right, in your mind. So you stop
Mm,
taking the medication, and then after a year or
bam.
so, you'll get a gout attack, another gout attack, and that is a big issue with doctors. They mentioned that in studies that uh, it's very different from diabetics and folks that have high cholesterol that take their medication on a regular basis. Gout sufferers actually like to skip on their medication,
I
unfortunately.
can compliance because it's not something that
Yeah.
is pressing every single day. I wanted to
Yeah.
actually ask that. What are some of the biggest challenges that gout sufferers face? I can imagine, as you said, compliance of some
Yeah.
medications, but what are some other like what are the biggest things that you're up against? Well, I guess, I mean, you've got a community now, and I can imagine people are probably asking. There's probably maybe I can imagine that there might be a certain topic which is difficult for people every time. Is it nutrition or is it lifestyle or is it Is there a group of people
Yeah,
who are also not wanting to take medication and wanting to get off? I don't know. Is there a
there's a lot
general?
of folks experimenting with the medication, and I tell them when they write me, do what you want to do, but work with your doctor and make sure you don't get another gout attack if you want to get off the medication. Because usually gout is a condition where you have to be on medication for life. For example, myself, I started at 300 milligrams a day, and with the dietary changes over time, I dropped it to 100 milligrams a day. But if I get off of it, which I have experimented in the past, a gout attack would return at some point in the future. So it's not safe in my case, because in my case, it's more genetic. I was born with a little thalassemia,
Mhm.
and that thalassemia, my doctor says, was probably the root cause of getting gout at such a young age. But other folks have claimed that they've cured gout through diet, and I wish them the best, but it doesn't mean you won't get another gout attack in the future. And if you do want to experiment and get off the medication, I would recommend you work with your doctor and do frequent blood tests to make sure your uric acid levels are in the safe zone and avoid potential gout attack down the road.
That's really interesting. I mean, that sounds really difficult actually, because even you do your best to follow nutritional guidelines, change your lifestyle, do exercise, not, keep your weight down, but you still might get gout attacks. That just
Yeah,
sounds like it can be really, really difficult. So,
yeah,
is there a way to reverse it, or
yeah. Well,
are
reverse it is medication.
mhm,
You want the medication to control your uric acid, and that will do it for the rest of your life. But even with medication, I tell people you got to change your diet, because if you
mm,
don't, because a lot of doctors will tell you take the medication, you could eat whatever you want. So that means go
mm,
eating, high protein diet again, drinking Coca-Cola and drinking alcohol on a daily basis. But what's going to happen? Your dosage is going to increase over the years. You're going to get a gout attacks even on the medication. You're doing yourself a disservice, and at the same time, you're risking other complications of gout, which could be like rheumatoid arthritis. You could become diabetic. You could get high blood pressure, bone erosion, issues with your joints. So it's not something that something that you have to take
everyone.
seriously at the end of the
Yeah,
day. Yeah,
yeah,
you got to make
yeah.
some changes somewhere.
Yeah, and it sounds like it's completely, that's the thing, is you actually do have control because it is a lifestyle disease
Yeah,
condition.
yeah.
Mm. Mm. And what are some of the best case scenarios that you've experienced in your community?
Well, a lot of folks who will follow the gout diet I write about in the book, and they do well. They control the uric acid levels. Those are the best case scenarios, I would say, is lose the weight, because if you're overweight, the condition can exacerbate. So that's pretty much it. And if you're an alcoholic, you have to um, stop drinking, start limiting, and if you need help, obviously Alcoholic Anonymous is there,
Mm.
AA, and yeah, that's pretty much it, I would say.
It really comes down, I feel like, to the root cause. And a lot of the work that I do as well, just in the holistic space, it's like getting to the root cause. Because often, with drinking alcohol or not exercising or binge eating or whatever it is that we're doing, I have never experienced being an alcoholic, but I also want to, like, also with food, the alcohol's not the problem or the food's not the problem. It's usually like an underlying reason that we are depending on something, or even substances and stuff like that. So I feel like, sometimes, and it's the same in my work as well, like it seems so easy to make all these changes, eat well, keep weight, do exercise, but sometimes it's just really difficult. And when you're been doing living life, having certain habits for so long, it can be really, really difficult to reverse it. So it's really nice to hear that you have, you've got a group of people who are making the change and doing the things and seeing that progress.
Yeah, food addiction, I would say, is a serious issue for most people, so it's a struggle. So what I tell folks is you're gonna fail, but the next day try and get back up and stay disciplined on your diet. So what I tell them to do is get a diary, perhaps write down what you eat, be more conscious of what you're eating on a daily basis. And when you lose track and you fail, you might get a flare up or a gout attack. Get up the next day and start all over again. And your palate takes time to change with once you introduce new food. So if you're used to burgers and steaks on a weekly basis, and then you switch to a bean salad, for example, it's going to take time, right? So give it time. But once your palate changes and you feel better, you lose the weight and so on, you're going to crave those foods and you're going to enjoy those foods more and you're going to stick to them. And that's where you're going to get meaningful change. And that's going to take a few months. It's not going to happen
Mm.
overnight.
No, it doesn't. And it's also the making these meaningful changes and not getting gout. You actually end up positively influencing every other aspect of your life as well.
Yes, yes, yes. You'll sleep better. Yeah, exactly. You'll feel better in different facets of your life.
Yeah, better energy, better bowel movements.
Yeah,
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 absolutely.
exactly.
So it sounds like a win-win. But yeah, I also understand it can be hard. So I guess when I think about the main thing that you have with gout and you, what's your main message for people who do struggle with gout? Like, what's your take-home message?
It's basically a warning. Your body's giving you a warning that if you don't make the changes, your health can deteriorate. So you have to take it seriously and start working at making a lot of changes diet-wise, lifestyle-wise, and that would probably be the main message of the
Mm.
gout in you.
Yeah, I like that because I think it's something that a lot of us are very disconnected with the body. And when we have signs and symptoms, whether it's gout, digestive issues, acne, whatever it is, listening to our body. Oh, that's
Yeah.
it's actually trying to tell us something. Take it easy, or yeah, whatever it is, and actually taking it seriously, listening to it, and this idea of we'll be fine. This is the health after 30. This is the reason why I started this podcast because we're fine in our 20s. We're completely fine.
Yeah, the
But then we kind of hit
20s.
30. The old tricks don't work anymore. We hit
Yeah,
30, things start popping up.
yeah,
Knees, this, that, cancers, like pretty serious things can't start coming into place. So yes, I feel very aligned with what you're saying because I think it's also a lot of what the podcast is about as well. It's like we need to start reconnecting. We need to start tapping into our body and, working with it instead of it feeling like it's working against us. Oh man, I've got
yes.
this condition, or oh man, I've got gout. I'm having a gout attack again. But using it as a bit of a report card for ourselves to be like, hey, let's get back in check.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, it's good. It's hard. It's not easy though. So for anyone who is newly diagnosed, fresh diagnosis, first bout attack, we know that we need to kind of take things seriously. And from what I gather, it's also there is medication. What is a piece of advice that you can kind of part with someone who's just been diagnosed and is looking for answers or looking for, yeah,
If
help?
you're newly diagnosed, see your doctor, obviously. Don't ignore it. Take the medication. Usually, there's only two medications for gout. So, if you get a gout attack, they give you colchicine, which is an anti-inflammatory to get rid of the pain and inflammation in usually the big toe or near the joint where you have the attack. And that works within days. And then your doctor will prescribe you usually allopurinol for long-term control of uric acid levels to make sure they stay at the safe levels and do that. Now, after that, you're going to have to change your diet. You're going to have to look at what you're eating, what caused it,
Mm-hmm.
and make the changes. Work with a nutritionist or go on my website at goutandyou.com and you can find plenty of free information on how to change your diet and what foods to eat and what foods to avoid and start implementing those changes. It's going to take time. Like I said, your taste buds won't like it in the beginning, but over time, you should improve and eat better and better and better and better. And start exercising if you're overweight. Try and drop the pounds, maintain your ideal weight because that's very important for gout. Uh, and I would say that's pretty much it. It's very simple. It's nothing complicated. That's pretty much it. If anybody has any questions, they could always email me on our site. I answer all questions within 24 hours if it's something more specific than that. But that I would say that's pretty much it.
Yeah, wonderful. And where do they find you? At goutandyou.com.
Yeah.
And that's also your Instagram handle. And
Yeah, Gout and use all the social media handles from
yeah,
YouTube to Instagram, TikTok, and so on.
I'll put them in the links below. And I have one more question, just in
Yeah.
regards to people who experience gout. Is there a trigger? So, does everyone have perhaps something which is their, let's say, poison? From your experience, is there a certain thing which each person has, and it might be different. Maybe it's fructose sugar for someone, maybe it's alcohol for someone else, maybe it's too much meat consumption. Is there usually a catalyst which is pushing the
Yeah.
gout attack to happen?
In my case, it was probably alcohol. But that's what triggered it that night. But overall, I was eating a lot of Big Macs. I remember eating at McDonald's a lot. I was overweight. So it could be a combination of that. But the trigger for me was alcohol. And you know what? Actually, other triggers at other times was usually alcohol. So I would say for myself is alcohol. And other people will tell me different foods that might affect them. They notice they flare up or get a gout attack. So yeah, I think there's some truth in what you're saying, that there's different catalysts, different triggers for different people. But the top five are the ones I mentioned, which are usually red meat, or too much protein, alcohol, sugary foods, seafood, and so on. So all foods have this chemical compound called purines, which the kidneys break down in the body, and it releases uric acid. So the highest foods with purine on the purine scale are usually all the meats. And once you go to the next group, usually after that it's alcohol and mainly beer, and after that seafood is high on the purine scale, and then all the processed foods.
Mm.
So yeah, and then processed usually means sugary foods, right? High fructose corn syrup like Coca-Cola and Pepsi and soft drinks and so on. Those are very
Which,
dangerous.
so yeah, I mean, for gout and just so many other things, I feel
Yeah,
this high fructose corn,
yeah,
it should be somehow regulated. Or
yeah, yeah. Actually, that's right.
if I were to give you a billboard in Times Square, what would your billboard say for anyone who's suffering or experiencing gout?
Probably a motivational quote. Usually, you need some type of motivation to make a change. If you don't make a change, your body will deteriorate, something to that effect, over time. And you'll be at a higher risk of other diseases as well. So it's time to take action now. Yeah, something to that effect.
Yeah, wonderful. And that's exactly what you do with your entire community. So, yeah, well done for doing that. If anyone who is experiencing gout, because you don't meet a lot of people who A, have had the experience, and B, have now, such a large platform to support people. So Gout and You is where to head. Thank you so much for sharing this information. I hope everyone who's listening, for the females out there, even though we might think it is a male condition, the 4%, it doesn't mean that it might not affect you and also someone you love. So it's just another reason to kind of A, listen to our bodies, and B, use it to take action to get on top of our health as well. It's something that I'm definitely happy to share. So, Spiro, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me, Alana.
Thanks so much for being here. You could have been listening to anything, but you're here interested in reclaiming your health. I hope you found the episode useful and constructive. If you enjoyed it and would like to show support for the show, please leave a review, as this makes my content more discoverable for other people to enjoy and learn from. Please also consider subscribing to the show on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, or wherever you enjoy listening. Finally, the best way to show support for the show is by sharing it with someone who you think might benefit from it. Thanks for listening, be well, and I'll catch you next time.